Good evening, everyone, again. Welcome to Holy Crap, the VlogCast. VlogCast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. The VlogCast was started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect because some people on Facebook told me that they could just post whatever the fuck they felt like because, you know what, we're just posting because it's fun. Doesn't have to make sense, doesn't even have to be right. So, stop telling us to do it the right way because our way is the right way and yours isn't because reasons. Part of the reason for doing this is also because of the old adage, sometimes the journey is far more impressive than the destination. I am known as Shujin Tribble all over the place. You can find me on G+, Twitter, Facebook, etc., 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 all over the place under that name. I was born to a Roman Catholic household in Brooklyn, New York. I was raised on Long Island, and I currently reside outside of Buffalo, New York, and am an unabashed atheist. Joining me tonight is Joseph.
Evening, folks. Joe here. Born in Chicago, Illinois, to a Roman Catholic family. I spent 8 years in the military, and currently I'm living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as a atheist, and currently, job-wise, graphic designer. That's it.
And Dallin.
Evening, folks. I go by the online name of Dallin. Born and raised in northern Canada, born to a Lutheran family with a bit of a twist. Religion was never big in my household. Instead, my parents always told me to keep an open mind, always ask questions, and never stop learning. I've carried that with me throughout my entire life. Never really gave religion much of a thought in terms of taking it seriously until fundamentalism started taking a bit of a more of a foothold in modern society, and decided it was time to stand up for reason, proper thinking, and just common frickin' sense.
That's it? Really? That's what we're going with? Okay.
I'm trying to bring this down to be as concise as possible. I always seem to end up changing it because, reasons. I'm still trying to find a place here, right?
Yeah, this is our second time running through the intros just tonight. We're already behind by more than about 40 minutes, so we're just trying to speed things up. That's all.
We're a little bit on the crispy side, yeah. Mm-hmm. All of you who are watching at this point, thank you very much for your patience. Like Joe said, this is the second time of really trying to go through this. Bit of a technological hurdle. Not exactly sure what in the hell is going on, but it's been enough to really piss us off. And I've gone through a complete reboot. I've gone through a complete thing with Ubuntu, trying to tell it, hey, if there's something wrong, fix it. And ditching Firefox, and it's a thing. So, again, thank you for hanging out with us.
Unsurprisingly, Firefox and Chrome did not want to play nice together.
Well, it seems Chrome is being... Google. Yeah, I was going to say, Chrome seems to be the more rational of the two browsers at this point.
Well, of course, that's because Chrome is Google.
Yeah, and didn't Firefox just release, what was it, version 32 or something like that?
Truthfully, I have no idea. I've got the security updates specifically set to download and install whenever they come.
Yeah.
But, it could be almost anything at the moment. We're going to have to see about that.
Yeah, but all I can say when it comes to Firefox is when you're getting into version numbers that big, it's time to think, maybe do a bit of a rethink, maybe start over. Because,
It's possible. Anyway, again, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. We do greatly appreciate it. This is episode number 32. No, there's no special or anything going along with it. It is September 7th, 2014, and we're going to be talking about the question of, what if you're wrong? And believe it or not, it's not actually what you think that we're going to be talking about. And gentlemen, if one or both of you would be so kind as to time me, I've got my phone charging at the moment, so I'm not going to pull up the 5-minute ticker window. For those of you that are interested in helping us out a little bit, if you've got a suggestion on what we can do as far as to calling the first 5-minute section 5-minute rant, 5-minute whatever, that'd be great, because I want to do whatever this thing is going to be. I'm going to make sure it's only 5 minutes. Start the clock. What I'm holding in my hand is a box. It is an old box, significantly old, as a matter of fact, and even though you can't see it on the camera at the moment, it has some Japanese text on the bottom. This box was something that a young lady that went to SUNY Fredonia at New York had in her possession when she went to college. And inside of that is a little book. As you can tell, it is Japanese in origin, and it was her journal of sorts. Granted, it didn't have a lot in it at the time, but there were some significant pieces on here. And I want to read a piece out of it from September 26th of 1988, some 26 years ago. I think I'm in heart, and I'm scared as hell he is too. I wish we could both forget about our past and fight for the truth. I don't want to hurt anyone because I feel the pain too. That was the first journal that my future wife put in here after having met me. And there are a couple of journals afterwards making mention about how much in love, how much we don't want to split up when I had to leave college, and how much she was wondering, is this really it? Is this the one? Is this the guy? Is this really what I'm feeling? 26 years ago today, 7 September of 1988, we met for the very first time, although it wasn't the first time that we saw each other. We both went into band. I happened to have been there a year before, so I knew where the place was. Although she and her friend tried to meet each other in front of the music building, which turned out the music building had two fronts, because there was an old building and a new building all welded together. And of course, one of them was in front of the old building, one in front of the new building, and after finally deciding, okay, I'm going to end up being late, finally came in and peeked in the door. And me being already in there with the rest of the band, I saw the door open and two heads pop in through the door, and I knew that they were freshmen because they had their instruments with them, and waved me, come on, you're in the right place. And didn't think of anything of it. And a couple of hours later, I went back to the girls' dorm to see if a friend of mine from the year before was still there. And I got up to the third floor, and there's her name up on the door, and there's a lot more decoration on there, and knock on the door. Nance, are you... Shoo! Alright, she didn't call me Shoo, of course, but called me by my real name. And here she comes down the hallway, gives me a big gulp bear hug. Good to see you, I didn't know if you were going to be here. I want you to meet my new roommate. I know you! And from inside the doorway, there's this little girl. Little. Sitting on her bed and looking over at me, and she's like, I know you. Really? You sure? Yeah, I came into band late, remember? Okay. Sure. And who would have thought that we would have made it? We were lucky. We were beyond lucky, beyond our dreams. And some years later, in 1993, we got married. And it was a great run. Up until 9 years ago, when we lost her to a rare form of cancer. So now closing on 10 years later, it's hard to think that I have effectively known Fujin for half of my life. And the 7th of September was always a day that we celebrated as an anniversary, as cute and sickening as it might be. But now, these years later, since her death, we go back to the band room every year. And I lay flowers in the band room every year. And it doesn't matter who's in there. I wait until they're done. And if there's nobody there, I just do it quietly. And afterwards, we go to the vineyard right near there, Woodbury, buy a case of wine, which you guys have been lucky enough to sample, and get some Chinese food for dinner. 7 stars around the moon from the place off of campus. I do it because I love. Because it's what we would have done anyway. Except for the flower part, that would have just come back to her. And fortunately, I would not have had anybody asking me, okay, so what did you do that you need forgiveness for? But every year, I take the moment to appreciate, to recognize how much we loved each other and how much the Princess Bride still resonates. You will occasionally find stuff on Twitter by me under the hashtag Death Cannot Stop True Love. If you would like to remember people, if you would like to support, if you'd like me to see it, use that hashtag this weekend, and I'll see it. And even if you don't, love is out there. Enjoy it while you can. Because you never know if it's the right one, or even how long it'll be. I love you, Fuj. I love you terribly. And thank you. So, let's actually go ahead and talk about this beast. Episode 32. Now, some people are kind of worried that what we're really going to be talking about is actually Pascal's wager. And I actually had a better title that I wanted to do, which would have been talking to the Oracle at Delphi, which would have been a programming joke, a geek joke, because Delphi from Borland is actually, object-oriented Pascal. And the only part of Pascal's wager that I'm caring about is the question mark of, what if you're wrong? But not about the theology question. I want to talk about, tonight, just that question. What if you're wrong? And I actually want to change it around a little bit to be, what do you do when you are wrong? What do we do when we're wrong? Because there's a shit ton of stuff that we talk about that we want to discuss, and we end up finding out, oh, geez, we're wrong about something.
So
that happens way too often.
So rather than, for the sake of clarification, we're not really discussing Pascal's wager. Rather, we're examining what our reactions are when we're in a foot and mouth situation.
Bingo, exactly right. And people have been using that piece of Pascal's wagers argument, which, oh Jesus, when we had I forget which episode it was on, but when we had the guys from Scathing Atheist on with us, Heath said that was his absolute worst trope to have to deal with. What if you're wrong? Pascal's wager just needs to just be buried and just be done with.
We could easily spend the next hour, honestly, we could probably spend the next day ripping that apart. And
easily.
Honestly, I could do it in almost a minute, but we're not here to discuss that.
No, not this time. No, this time, instead of the theological part of it all, it's just a question mark of we make mistakes all the time. We are brought up thinking things. We think that we know things, and then all of a sudden, there's stuff that we didn't know that we didn't know, and that's a problem for some people. It's a real significant problem for some people. So that's what I want to talk about tonight, because it's easy to run your mouth on stuff that you don't know anything about. It's real tough to just take a step back and go, you know what? I don't know. So I'm going to put you on the spot first, Al, because stuff happens all the time. We end up talking about stuff on Friday night shows, and you go looking up stuff that's basically WTF for the night.
I do try, yeah.
Yeah. What's come up for you that you've suddenly seen stuff where it's like, okay, this is cool WTF that I did not know was even possible, and what?
Well, I mean, I've also had a couple of articles that I did come up with that we had to admit were a laugh a minute.
It's true.
I mean, let's face it, in my day I've come up with a few zingers, not to toot my own horn by any stretch.
No,
but, well, for instance, the one that got me was Bill Nye. You remember this one?
Which one in particular?
Where he apparently exploded and was dropping more F-bombs than a B-52 on a run.
Okay.
Only to find out after I'd gone out and just had made this humongous comedic production of it. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, I actually can give you the illusion that I'm funny sometimes. Just ask these two clowns. Anyways, only to find out afterwards that the whole thing had been satire. It was basically onion grade bullshit. And so right there, I had gone out and made this outrageous thing, had it debunked within 2 minutes of it coming out of my mouth. And no, I did what I always do. I took the mea culpa and said, okay, guys, I was wrong. I do apologize. About the only thing I said afterwards was, but you have to admit, it was funny as hell.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know? So, no, like, I've got no problem, being wrong. I have no problem changing my views, changing my opinions, changing my entire outlook on something based on new evidence that comes my way. And I'm not just talking from a theology perspective. I'm talking about anything. Scientific, socio-political, current events, news, and especially these days. I mean, there's a couple of things brewing on right now. I'm not going to get into them tonight because, like Joe said, there are some topics that we could go longer than Atheists on Air because I am nowhere near out of beer, and I don't think he's anywhere near out of cigarettes. Props to you, Cash, just so you know.
and for the record, no fucking way we're going to go ahead and do 3 hours. 2 hours was way too much as it was.
Actually, you know what? I was checking my iTunes a couple days ago. He's got a 4-hour show on there.
Let's do 5.
Yeah.
Actually, wait a second. Back up a second. By the way, for the record, because since we're name dropping anyway, Sam Mulvey from the guys over there at Asking. Sorry, it's no longer Ask an Atheist. Ask an Atheist with Sam Mulvey.
Oh,
they are
nice.
They are relocating. They're leaving KCLA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the radio station they were on, right?
KLAY. Clay? I'm not pretty, shit. I forget which radio station. Anyway, they're leaving the station that they were on, and they're retooling. They're going to be coming back on again, but they're going to be doing another streamathon coming up on the whatever weekend it was, the weekend of the 20th. So
okay.
I'm going to be letting them know that I would love to pop on for a little while with them if things work out well. So we'll see if that happens, and it's good cause getting money over to them. But anyway, now that I've completely derailed you over here,
as always. No, like I said, being wrong about anything these days, it's a bitter pill to swallow. Like knowing it's like something that you've known or that you think you've known for the longest time, suddenly finding out that you'd basically been wired with false information or bad information, it is a bitter pill to swallow. And it's
it's ironic you're saying that. I'll tell you why in a second. Continue.
Yeah, but it's humbling to realize that you are not the authority. And like when I was in school, people looked to me because I was a bit of a nerd back in the day. I think I still am. I mean, well, shit, I'm on a Google Hangout. Of course, I've still got my nerd cred. My point, though, is when I get out in the real world, I suddenly realize that, the whole thing about being a brain or a geek, out in the real world, it's at a whole nother level, and you're going to be wrong more times than you're going to be right. So once I accepted that, I just realized that I may never be right about something, and now I'm almost channeling Dillahunty here. Again, name dropping. Props to you, Matt.
Maybe we'll get him one day.
I better make sure I am like completely drunk when that happens. I think that's about the only way I could even have a discussion with him, because he is so many levels above me anyway. He makes me feel like a kindergarten kid. Anyways, no, to come out and say you're absolutely right about something, especially in the big world these days, no. If you're going to say something, you better back it up. And if you're wrong, be ready to change your outlook. And if I can just give you one thing about that, I'm going to drop another name, Stephen Hawking. This is the guy whom, when you first hear his name, you think black hole. Now, I was watching a bit of Cosmos today, and now that might not entirely be him alone. There were predecessors. But just recently, he had published a thing that's saying that his entire, based on some evidence, I haven't read the whole thing, but apparently based on something he just discovered, everything he knew, taught us, and that we have come to accept about the notion of a black hole might all be wrong. So if a titan of science can admit it, then anybody can admit it and can take it in stride, stop, rethink, recalibrate, and move on.
Perfect sense. Joe, where do you want to go on this one? And then I'll pick up where I was going to go.
It's great that Dallin brought up that example, because one of the things that passes through my mind, not every time, but sometimes when I make a particularly big mistake, one of the things that passes through my mind is, well, damn, I'm at least in good company. I mean, good example, Einstein. I can't remember which theory that it was that he was getting ready to present over in Berlin, but the day before, he actually noticed, right when he was about to mail this packet of information that he collaborated on over there, he realized, I've made a mistake. And again, I don't remember which one it is, but he realized that he was wrong on something, and he waited and went ahead and made sure that he got it right, that all the tumblers were falling into place before he continued onward. And we are human beings. We are imperfect creatures. Not to necessarily borrow a page from theologists or theological sources, but we are imperfect creatures. We are agents of chance in many cases. And the day that you meet somebody who claims to know and be right on everything is the day you run.
Ain't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Because, if I'm wrong on something, earnestly wrong on something, depends on, how vehement I was on it before. If, I put up a big fight about it and, got into, practically a slugging match over something with somebody, and then, it's pointed out, hey, you were wrong, I'll, apologies all around, I'm an asshole. If it wasn't something of that caliber, and somebody points up, yeah, your understanding of this might be flawed. To which I can only answer, well, that's fine. I don't expect myself to understand everything. Please, if you have the answers, feel free. I am always eager to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't it the truth?
And then of course there are those situations where, you know, it's just a big mess up, and all you can do is put your hands up and say, "Hey, I fucked up."
Yep.
Sorry to use the word, but it's the only one that really sets the mood for the statement.
Yeah, depending as to how big a thing it is, yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. What I do like, though, about coming out of something like that, like when you've been beaten down by the fact that you're wrong, if you do it more than a few times, when you do sort of stand up and reevaluate and you're about to go again, you do step a little more cautiously than you did before to make sure that you've maybe got a little bit of evidence behind you before you shoot your mouth off.
A good example is the scientific method in itself. It's full of falsehoods and mistakes. That's the whole point of it. We run a test. We run a theory through a test, you know, thinking that we're going to get this particular outcome. And more often than not, it does not happen the way we think it's going to happen.
That's
and
right.
You can ask any scientist in any field. Mistakes happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that you got to pick yourself up, learn from them, and continue to move forward.
Well, there was actually one example that I had to deal with, sort of in a social media setting, and again, I'm not one to flog a dead horse, but Hobby Lobby.
Okay.
Now, no, like I said, we're reaching back on this one. Now, everybody, I'm assuming, who's watching this knows that there was a big kerfuffle over health benefits regarding contraception not being allowed at Hobby Lobby for religious reasons.
Specifically female.
Specifically female contraception. My bad.
No,
Now,
just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. That's all.
No, you're right. And you see, again, I should have been more specific at that point. My bad. Now, while I was completely behind everybody getting mad about it, because, you know, that kind of bullshit is so medieval. We shouldn't even be thinking this way. I mean, this kind of philosophy is taking our world, 5 steps backward in social evolution. Now, however, while I was looking around at news articles and stuff about this one post I saw on a news site got me thinking. And it turns out that there are, in fact, I believe it was 13 methods of contraception that the Affordable Care Act requires companies to support. Now, Hobby Lobby apparently supports 10 of them, but the 3 that they were complaining about were ones that could potentially, holistically, in a roundabouty kind of way, cause something kind of sort of similar to an abortion. And of course, as soon as the A word comes up, the right is right there.
All bets are off at that point.
Yeah. So what this article was doing was pulling a huge amount of apologetic acrobat equivalency by saying, but look, we're not banning all contraception. You have these other 10 methods. So I posted that out and said, okay, folks, are we wrong in our vehement pissed offness about this whole thing? And someone actually had the grace, and I say grace because they were actually very, very civil about it, and my hat's off to them for it. They told me the Affordable Care Act. Did I mention earlier this show is brought to you by beer? See, right here, folks. And no, that's not a wine glass, it's a Stella Artois glass. I drink with class. Anyways,
The Affordable Air Act.
Yeah, the Affordable Air Act requires by law that all 13 methods of contraception be allowed or be available to a female employee, and that management of a company has no say, religious or otherwise, as to basically they cannot cherry pick which ones are allowed and which ones aren't. Knowing that, the anger and vehemency and everything that is restored, because they are in fact being absolute dicks about it, and this is an all or nothing situation. So I went off and said, okay, what if I actually am wrong about this? Well, it turns out I wasn't, but I was ready to change my opinion if it was.
Which is not an easy thing to do for anybody's ego.
I've said before, it's a bitter pill, it's humiliating, but it's necessary, because if you're out there in the world with a head full of bad wiring, and I mean, I fear for our future, 2 generations from now, if the right things are going, yeah, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. Now here's... Yeah,
well,
go ahead, Joe.
The way I see it is, screw ego in general. It just doesn't help you at all. That's why I favor the id.
All right, so here's...
You got me there. Yeah, screw no Moscow with fisses.
Okay, so here's the irony with the bitter pill, because I've got 2 pieces of information.
Uh-oh.
One of which I'm going to be quoting directly from close, warm, personal friend of the show and all-time biggest financial supporter of the show, Tim Minchin. You might have heard of him. A little something from a piece that he has recorded called Storm. Science adjusts its belief based on what's observed. Faith is denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. If you show me that, say, homeopathy works, then I will change my mind. I will spin on a fucking dime. I'll be embarrassed as hell, but I will run through the streets yelling, "It's a miracle, take physics and bin it. Water has memory, and while its memory of a long-lost drop of onion juice is infinite, it somehow forgets all the poo it's had in it." That is the entirety of what science is based upon. If you can actually show something is the way that you say that it is, and you can show it consistently, purposefully, in all manner of time and space and everything, we'll spin on a dime. We'll follow you. We will come to your brand new marching parade and your drummer, and we will be out there and we'll do it.
We'll come to your barbecue.
And we will feel stupid as all hell for not having seen it in the first place. But show us that you're right, and we'll be right there behind you, right in your camp. Now,
I don't know if
if you can't.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be feeling stupid. I think I'd be more like going up to them and saying, "Well, it's about fucking time."
There is that possibility. But
just saying.
Here's the other quote that is actually really good. Now, the little one and I had recently finally watched Men in Black. First time that she's actually seen it where she would really remember it now. Because there were some things that I've said that were directly from that, and she's just like, "What are you talking? Oh, it's from Men." Oh, yeah, okay.
Number 1?
Yes, the first one. So this is from the first Men in Black movie, which takes us back to 1997, surprisingly enough. And it's early in the movie, and Edwards and Kay are sitting over in Battery Park, and they're trying to decide should Edwards join the MIBs. And he's talking with him, and the exchange is this. Edwards saying, "Why the big secret? People are smart, they can handle it." Talking about aliens. And Kay's response is the following. "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that humans were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow. And that's really it. That's the entirety of it. Yeah, it sucks when we recognize that we are so much of a sheep when the moment takes us in a moment of panic or in a moment of passion. But individually, you get us all. We work very hard. Generally speaking, people work very hard towards following what actually makes sense, what's true. I mean, name dropping. Since we mentioned about Matt Dillahunty before, his great line. Dallin, you might remember it better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to quote him a hell of a lot better than I do. He's got a philosophy of what he wants to know, what he wants to believe, and I'm trying to remember exactly what his quote is.
Yeah, it's I'm kind of blanking on it too. It's just
Joe,
that
I don't know if you remember it.
when you see him in a debate, though, he always says, he can never claim to be right about anything.
He wants to believe as many true things and disbelieve as many false things as possible. I'm not saying it right the way that he does, but
Yeah.
I want to. Damn it! I forget exactly how it works, but it comes down to I want to know that what I'm believing is right or wrong, and I want to believe the stuff that's right, and I want to disbelieve the stuff that's wrong, as much as possible. True.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Not right or wrong. So that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's simply this. I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible.
That's the one. Exactly right. And that's a tough thing to do sometimes, especially when you're discussing with people about stuff, and there is very likely going to be a time when you're going to say blah, and it's something you've always taken for granted because it's always been taught to you. Mm-hmm. The sky is blue because Joe, why is the sky blue?
Because God loves the infantry drill sergeant.
So help me! I'm gonna come out there. I'm gonna.
Okay, tell you what. Allow the humble Canadian to try to save this one.
Sure, please.
A bit from the recently departed and sorely missed Robin Williams. Daddy, why is the sky blue? Well, because the atmosphere. Well, why is there atmosphere? Because we have to breathe. Well, why do we have to breathe? Who are you, Carl Sagan? You can drill shit down as much as possible.
And I apologize, but yeah, that was my old military self peeking through there for a minute. I had to because it's a little game that gets played in basic training for a lot of different MOSs, particularly the combat ones. Obviously, the infantry in particular. Okay. What? Why is the sky blue? Because God loves the infantry drill sergeant. Why does the green grass grow? Blood, or what makes the green grass grow? Blood, blood, blood makes the green grass grow, drill sergeant.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes on and on like that, and memories.
Man, and I thought things were bad for me trying to memorize dates, places, and events in history class when I was going through grade school and such.
Look,
all I can think of is, I know the reg forces are definitely a force to be reckoned with, but I've also heard that the Marines have got to be like the absolute craziest of the crazy.
Yep.
One of my best friends happens to be one. I don't even want to know what they go through in basic.
No, it's just
especially after I saw my friend when he got out of basic. He came up here. He came up to Canada for a visit. Yeah, and then we started talking quote unquote war stories. I don't know if he'd seen Frontline yet, but he definitely had to remind people of why they're called jarheads, and why you don't, and why. When they say they graduated from Paris Island, you leave them alone.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah, apparently about a dozen guys in a bar found that one out the hard way.
Doesn't surprise me. Anger management issues abounds in various groups that are a little.
Yeah.
When you,
But
when
you know what?
I'm sorry.
No, but you know what? To tie this all up, we've just said a bunch of stuff about the Marine Corps. We could be wrong. If someone tells us, truthfully, factfully, what it's like going out there, and it's not what we all think it is, you know what? I'll mea culpa that one, and I won't feel bad about it.
That's because, for the most part, you're on the other side of the border, and you know that they're not going to come up there and get you.
Did I mention I have a friend who comes up and visits here once in a while who is a Marine?
Yeah,
so
but
I
you
could
fill
get
them with
that
alcohol.
visit.
So, I mean,
Yeah, but you're still of the ones that bend a knee to the throne.
I'm not even going to get into the whole thing how apparently the Queen of England was at the Ren Fair and told me I better show up.
I saw that. That was great. Anyway, what I was actually going for, believe it or not, yes, I actually remembered this time. Brain works tonight.
Ooh,
what I was
that's
actually
good.
going for, is the answer that I remembered about why the sky being blue was because it was reflecting the light from off of the oceans.
Yes,
Now,
that was one of
Yeah.
the results that came up when I was trying to find the rest of that infantry quote.
Nice. Your Google fool fares. Okay, so the traditional answer of light is being bent back by the atmosphere, and what we're actually seeing is the color of the oceans coming back to us. The funny part of it is there is the possibility for something like that to have happened. However, it isn't the truth.
No.
It's possible for light to be refracted in a multitude of numbers of ways, including by atmospheric disturbance.
Yeah, good example. I've heard it said that it's not necessarily the oceans, but actually the nitrogen content in the upper atmosphere as sunlight passes through it, differing angles of sunlight. Normally, when we're talking blue sky, we're talking like noonish and such. When you have that kind of direct passage of light through the atmosphere, that it was supposedly the nitrogen that that was causing the refraction and causing the majority of it to be blue of what we see.
Okay, that's
But
one I'm
again,
familiar with.
That is a theory. I'm not saying that is why.
Fair enough. It turns out that for photonic light, I'm using that term in particular, to be monkeyed with, refracted, bent is probably the better word for it. Bent in the atmosphere is not exactly difficult when you've got a difference in temperature gradients, when you've got differences in the density of air. And yeah, I'm throwing out these weird technological terms, and just bear with me for a second. But all those pieces come into play when you go out in the summer day and you're driving along and the road is kind of dipping down a little bit in front of you, and you can see the waves of the things back behind whatever it is that you're looking at that looks like it's rippling, the traditional image of the mirage in the desert. That's exactly what it is. And the same thing can happen with radio waves too, as a matter of fact, where Dr. Bill and I over at Buff State, when we were on the Monday Night All Talk at the radio station over there, during the summer, the temperature differential between Lake Erie and the air above it would actually trap in a section between the water and the section of atmosphere. The FM radio signal would actually bounce back and forth through that and what's called duct, because that's exactly what it's doing, duct the radio signal across the water into Ontario. And subsequently, we would end up with phone calls from people on the Canadian side calling over and saying, "Turn off your goddamn transmitter, I can't hear Toronto." And it is actually a true thing. The current long-distance record for something like that is to transmit from up in the hills in California, near the coast, and being picked up by a radio station, ham radio stations, by the way, in Hawaii, traveling through a hurricane or a typhoon or whatever it is that's called over on that side. And that's a couple thousand miles. It's pretty damn impressive when you get down to it.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the idea of the colored light bouncing back through the atmosphere and coming down to us, okay, it's a good story. It's just a story, but it's a good, somewhat believable story.
It's a good theory. It's a plausible theory.
Yeah.
Well, let's be fair. It's a hypothesis. Let's make sure that because we're going to come back to that one in a second. But the actual is so much cooler, but it's a little bit more technical versed. Mm-hmm. It's the excitation of the oxygen atoms in the atmosphere getting hit by these packets of photons, getting excited and putting off a little bit of photon back in the blue spectrum that we see and lights up. And that's what we end up with. And the lower the sun gets down, it stretches out more because it's more, and it gets more orangey because the wavelengths and stuff.
Yeah, it's what they call Rayleigh scattering, is the actual name behind the phenomenon of a blue sky during the day and a red sky at night. And you've got it right. You have the shorter wavelengths of blue light, which are being scattered in the atmosphere for those reasons during the day. But as the sun sets, you're getting hit more with longer wavelength red light, which is why your twilight times start to shift from blue to purple to red, and then eventually, well, to black when the sun is no longer in the sky, so to speak.
Exactly, and
Here's one.
it's so much cooler to me, and I'm not saying that from a color palette perspective. It is so much cooler to me to understand little individual packets of light that we can see spend 100,000 years traveling from the center of the core of our sun, another 9.5 minutes out to us, maybe actually hitting our atmosphere, maybe actually hitting one molecule of oxygen, and then suddenly it glows like a neon light, a little bit.
Here's one that I think I ran by you guys before that had you scratching your heads. Question: what color is the sun?
I think we went through that one. As I recall, I think that I had answered white. Dal?
It could have been something like that, yeah. Except
a lot of people answer it's either orange or yellow. What we perceive here on the surface of the planet is that it is orange. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it from the color palette perspective, the sky looks blue, and the sun seems orange to us. Blue and orange are complementary colors. It's the effect of our atmosphere filtering out that particular wavelength. Now, if you were to look at the sun without an atmosphere in the way, it would appear white. That's just because of the intensity of the light that it's putting out.
Exactly.
They've actually gone and measured the wavelengths coming off of the sun via satellites, and the majority of the photons that it's putting out are in the wavelengths of what we know as green light.
Ooh. Well, damn. This okay. But this is interesting.
You are right in that it is white because it is putting out all different colors, but on a level imperceptible to us from here on the surface, the majority of what it's putting out is green. And even if we were to look at it with the naked eye without an atmosphere in the way, it would still look white to us simply because of the damn intensity.
Yeah, but now if you were to go away from it for, let's say, look at it from a couple light years out, right? And actually maybe even not even that much. Now, and the only reason I said this is because this is something I've observed with my own eyes in an astronomy class, actually in a lab. I went to an observatory, and it was actually the first time I ever saw the planet Saturn with actual like rings defined and stuff like that. If that didn't blow my mind enough, it was what the guy showed us next. He pointed us to a star that, again, you can see with the naked eye, just, a twinkling little pinprick up there, until you look at it through the telescope. And this thing was a 3-inch refractor, sidereal clock, the whole 9 yards. And what I saw when I looked through the eyepiece was actually, it was a binary star system. So 2 stars orbiting around a center of mass. One star, distinctly yellow through the eyepiece. The other star, distinctly blue. I wish I could remember what the name of the star was so that I could show you guys. But so yeah, so looking in from, actually I think even Neptune would be too close. Looking out, say, whereabouts Voyager is right now. Or if someone from on another planet was looking at our sun through a telescope, they might actually be able to see a distinct color.
Do you remember what constellation?
Joe, we're talking.
Okay, because the first one that comes, and the most predominant one that gets mentioned is the Albireo.
Albireo?
Yeah.
Yeah. It might have been. You got to realize that we're talking like, 1991. There, I just dated myself, folks. Congratulations. I'm old. But no, it was. Yeah, but like I said, it was just it was quite fascinating to see that you can actually see the distinct colors of stars if you look at them the right way, or if you're looking at them through a telescope.
Things are not always as they appear.
Yeah, which makes me wonder. Now, we've always perceived the sun to be yellow. Here's a good one. So we all believe that the sun is actually a yellow star. Well, if we could go out to a distance where that intensity that we know or that we deal with right now isn't such a big factor, would we actually see it as a yellow star, or, as you said, would we see it as a green star?
Again, we have not looked at it from that far away, so we really don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But my assumption would be, I mean, we're not saying that like 90% of the light it's putting out is green. More like it may appear maybe a tinge green, but who knows?
I guess the other thing we need to think about though too is the heat, because you have red hot, white hot, then it goes to blue hot, and I believe there's a green hot, which I think the star Vega is in the green hot zone, which means it's a big damn star that's burning really damn hot.
I think that really breaks down to why people look at the sun and assume that it's yellow or orange. I mean, just from here on the surface, we see it go through phases from bright red to orange to yellow to white, and back. I remember growing up looking at all these different charts of the solar system and such, and of course they always pictured the sun as being this yellow-orange mixture with all these little red spots in, because, well, I suppose when you look at it from a reasoning perspective back in the day, it's a big ball of fire. And generally speaking, we identify fire with colors like that. So I can understand why they would go there, but
Well, Well, it would be an interesting experiment to carry out if it is possible at this point to be able to see our sun from the same distance from which we see other stars.
Yeah, we're kicking ourselves in the ass because we didn't put a camera on Voyager.
Well, no. We do have a couple of cameras on Voyager. The problem
Unfortunately,
is
they've been shut down to conserve power.
Yeah, she's running on effectively nuclear fumes. As stands, last I remembered, the expectation is that she should no longer have enough power to transmit back to us in 2025. I think is the last date that I had heard.
Yeah,
but
2025.
I think that's the latest estimate that I've heard. Now, considering that Voyagers are running with basically little nuclear payloads to generate heat and power, these guys have been running since 1976.
Mm-hmm.
So far, they've been doing pretty damn good, because, all right, 76, 86, 96, 2006, 16... That's 40+ years. That's, grand scheme of things, that's pretty good. Because I mean, it's going to be a pain in the ass to try and go out there for what am I looking for? Warranty service at this point.
Yeah,
it's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, August 20th, 1977 is when Voyager 2 was launched.
Nice.
So you're looking at just shy of 40 years.
Yeah. Next thing you know, when we finally do meet aliens, it'll be some representative from the Galactic Waste Management saying, yeah, you threw this bit of trash out about 40, 50 years ago, and yeah, we've got 50 years worth of fines that you have yet to pay.
I'm actually waiting for the one Voyager to show up, or the one interstellar traveler to show up and saying, take us to Johnny Be Good.
Actually, I think one of my favorite ideas is somebody to come back and you drop something, you just bring it back to us.
That would be good. Yeah, just as long as we don't have that whole Star Trek motion picture thing, where it actually comes back wanting to assimilate us.
Okay, there's a good piece right there. Okay, now this actually works out well. Believe it or not, I can dovetail on this one. Our again good close warm personal friend of the show, Carl Sagan, Doctor Professor Carl Sagan, maker of all things apple pie-ish. He had argued at one point also. What's to say that every civilization, spacefaring civilization, would be peaceful? And that is a really, really difficult pill to swallow, because that flies in the face of a lot of assumptions that we've had in the past. Not the least of which is, why would anybody go out into space? Well, because it's a big frontier and you can't make it out there unless you're all cooperating. Well, says who? After all, it's entirely possible to stop and reverse hyperinflation in an economic downspin, a death spiral like nobody's almost never seen before, by generating something other than peaceful means. Some people know what I'm talking about. Joe, I know full well, knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Look at as horrible as it is to bring it up. Look at just exploration throughout the last millennia. It's mostly been a matter of, okay, we're going out, and we're not necessarily going out to find new things. No. Let's see. What was Christopher Columbus going out to find? I know he's a poor example. I mean,
not necessarily.
But particularly, what did he set out to do?
He wanted to find an alternate route to China from Europe, so that so that they could bypass the Muslim-controlled areas in between to continue trade. At least that's what I was taught.
Well, the Indies.
Yeah.
Right.
Or India, my bad.
And I can't remember which conquistador it was that had said
You know
this.
what? Doesn't matter. They all said it.
They
were all a bunch of bastards.
Big example of what they went out for when they asked. They said it bluntly: gold and Christians.
Yeah.
Horrible as it may be, if a race, a civilization has gone to the lengths of going out into space and going that far out, there's probably a motive behind it. And yeah, as we have seen throughout history, motives are a bitch.
Yeah.
And the worst case scenario, look at specifically the conquistadors. What happens when a technologically advanced civilization comes in contact with a primitive indigenous civilization? Needless to say, it does not end well for the indigenous population.
Yeah.
I thought you had more you were going to add on to that, Dal.
No, I agree. And I mean, everything we've seen throughout our history, just as Joe said, has been the advanced civilization comes across the savages. And I'm pretty sure that if we ever did get off our butts and did get out to the stars, the prime directive is not going to apply. Well, of course, now that depends on who is spearheading, these missions. If it's more from a scientific thing, then there could be, tenets of non-aggression, non-interference, that kind of stuff. If exploration, and I use that term loosely, is based on military philosophy, then it's going to be, we're going out to kick ass and take names.
Yeah, precisely. And science fiction, yeah, we probably shouldn't mention it, but then again, the folks who are behind these stories in science fiction do make these considerations. I mean, for example, Independence Day. What did the aliens come here for? For our natural resources. They were essentially locusts. Battle LA, which I personally feel is is it Battlefield LA? One way or the other. I personally feel it's a very underrated movie. I enjoyed it. They specifically came for water because water can only exist in a liquid state within the Goldilocks zone, and with some exceptions. Example, Europa. We believe that liquid water exists on Europa because of tidal massaging from Jupiter.
Yeah.
Though I hesitate to bring up this example. Battlefield Earth. Terrible acting in Travolta aside, they came, of course, for the gold. I doubt that gold would be a specifically specific cause for interstellar activity, because let's face it, all the gold that's on the planet right now is a result of impact from elsewhere.
Yeah.
The gold on this planet was not produced in our sun. Gold is too heavy to be produced by a living sun. The gold on our planet was produced from other suns that went, pretty much.
The only place gold can be created is in a supernova explosion.
Yeah, Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson put it best. How do you get something heavier than what the factory can produce? Well, you blow up the factory.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is the terrorists win. That's what it comes down to.
It's just a matter of all the gold and all the heavier elements on our planet are the result of interstellar activity affecting us here on Earth, which now that you think about it, wow, some sun in a distant system actually affected the majority of human history simply by dying and spewing its leftovers all over a patch of, rock covered with that would eventually be covered with greedy little bastards.
And to think some of that stuff may still be out there. There still may be stuff that would otherwise have been here from that very same explosion, traveling still out there somewhere.
That is one of the considerations that they're looking at as far as the privatization of space. One of the ideas that has been put out there, one of the ones that I have personally used for projects that I've done, the idea of space mining.
Yeah.
That, the debris that exists throughout our solar system, not just the asteroid belt, but all over the place. There's cosmic trash all over our system. And who knows how much of any number of materials are out there that we could potentially gather and bring back. Not saying that's a great idea. I mean, after all, these things have been sitting out among the solar system, constantly being bombarded from solar radiation with absolutely no atmosphere to insulate them from it. For all we know, there could be an asteroid that is the majority of which is gold, but the second you so much as touch a bit of it, you're glowing in the dark.
Yeah, she'd be a little hot on the Geiger scale there.
Which is entirely... Yeah, which is entirely possible. Folks, thank you, of course, for sticking with us. We are coming up onto about the last half hour or so. I'm not entirely certain, simply because of the technological problem getting us started. We started way late, so I'm going to call us about another half an hour or so. Yeah. And my camera's pointed way too high into that light. Sorry about that.
That'll just about do it, because technically, if we go straight from where we started at about 12:40.
Yeah, so we'll go with about that.
12:50, somewhere in that area. So yeah, that'll work.
Okay, so we'll go with that. So
we got a little bit off topic there. My fault.
No, not exactly. Actually, works out well. For those of you who are watching, of course, live, which according to our counter, we have somebody watching live. So whoever you are, thank you. If you've got questions, by all means, feel free to take advantage of the Q&A system. Put it up all the time for folks. If you want to drop us a message and ask a question, please feel free by all means. And for those of you that are watching after the fact, thank you very kindly. If you would like to send an email over to ask about stuff or to pose questions or topic ideas, you can send them over to me as shujintribble@gmail.com, all one word. If you found me over here on YouTube, it should be hard for you to figure out how to put that out there. If, however, you would like to use the voicemail system, and my apologies, I don't have the graphic up right now. I got to figure out how to make that work. I got to see about building one for myself. But the voicemail line is area code 859-HCTV. Holy crap, the VlogCast. 554. Or if you just want to type it in directly, it's 859-4288-554. I'll try to come up with some kind of better mnemonic than they used on the IT crowd later. Now, the reason why what you were describing is not exactly going down the rabbit hole, which, by the way, Witchy, yeah, you kind of missed out again tonight, so screw you. You really want bunnies that bad? Fine, you can have 1-8. All right. The question mark as far as to how did we form, and by we I mean our solar system, this solar system, and its place in everything, and how it was influenced by not just our sun, not just the accretion disk that we are expected to have formed out of, but from innumerable novae from who only knows how many corners of the universe is positively mind-numbing, because you start to get into how much silica do we have, how much iron, how much uranium, Where did all of that come from? We know it didn't come from our sun. All this stuff just came together from stuff all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
Did the sun itself come because of 0-point energy from virtual particles that just fell apart from each other and became the helium and hydrogen and just started to broil and crush itself into what it is today? It gets mind-numbing. How many different pieces could be just expected to be, and how many possible alternatives are there? The idea that the moon and the earth formed together was what I was always expected. Now we're coming up with a very plausible theory that the proto-earth was smacked upside its own damned head by something about the size of Mars.
Yep.
And suddenly, boom, we've got two unique systems working together, one of which was lucky enough to have water, liquid water. And who only knows if it's right? We're still not sure yet. We've got a lot of stuff that says, yeah, this probably is, maybe it isn't. But it gets to be mind-numbing sometimes, having to look this stuff over and go, I've always taken this for granted. Maybe I shouldn't. And Dallin, you said it so well earlier. It's humbling.
It is. And speaking about just the origin of our solar system, the origin of our sun, how the Earth and Moon came about. In the years I've been on this planet, which are several, I've heard probably a dozen theories. Each one, in its own time, with the technology we had at that time, was plausible and relatively accurate. But it was never accepted as pure truth because what you just said, Shujin, I just saw what you're talking about on a show not too long ago about the being smacked upside the head. Which, you know, based on what they've seen, they've done type surveys between, you know, the content of the rocks on the moon versus, you know, certain parts of the Earth, have found disturbing similarities that lend themselves to that particular theory. And actually, when I was in college, I had to do a research paper, and I chose the life and death of stars. You want to talk mind-boggling? Think of this. A nebula. I think something like the Crab Nebula, okay? Wisps of gas light years across. Just floating there doing nothing. And then suddenly, a shockwave. Just the hint of a shockwave from an explosion millions of years prior ripples across that nebula. Just gives it that minuscule nudge that two particles suddenly are attracted and exert just that tiniest bit more of a gravitational pull than its surrounding area.
Dominoed.
And that is, at least according to the paper I did, which, again, these days may have been disproven, but that's where it starts. Just something a little bit bigger than something else. And it, well, you said dominoes. I was going to say something else. I'm not sure. Does the list apply here?
Go for it.
It snowballs.
Yeah.
And eventually the
Absolutely.
gravitational pull gets bigger. It starts pulling in more and more and more and more stuff. That gas eventually all gets sucked in. Suddenly you've got these protostars that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then suddenly, boom, the furnace ignites and kablooey. You've got a star. Now my research on that was very primitive, you know, for obvious reasons. Based on what I see now with like with the asteroid belt and everything else I've seen, yeah, my alarm clock just went off. What I see now in our current solar system and everything I've read, what I had researched could use a lot more work because, you know, a sun blows or a star is born. Well, is there automatically, like, I don't know if the ejecta has a lot of solid material that eventually accretes into something that could eventually become a solar system. I don't know. I'm also not an astronomer. I would actually love to read up more on that and find out what details did I miss in that research paper, because the model I based my research off of didn't lend itself to, okay, we've got a star, how do we get planets? And I wish I could have gone further, but I had a constraint on the essay as well. I could have written a book about it if I tried. I should have.
Well,
Maybe I'll see if we can get Dr. Tyson on sometime too. I got nothing to lose by asking.
Well, I already told you that if ever there was a pie in the sky where money was no object, I'd be building a ship to take him to Europa with some good fishing gear, and we'd be sitting there ice fishing with a couple of beers, Canadian style, on Europa.
Of course, Joe.
Well,
I got him.
It's just that that kind of happenstance thing. When you think of the expanse of the universe as we understand it right now, that kind of thing is happening all across the universe every single second, and these are processes that play out over the course of billions of years. But the parts of that process are happening constantly throughout the universe. And when you think about it, and Dr. Tyson, for example, broke down the history of the theorized history of our universe into a 12-month calendar.
Yeah.
When you think about it, the planet Earth has only been around since, what was it? Or the history of human civilization extends the last 30 seconds of December 31st.
Yeah.
So when you put it on that kind of time scale, yeah, there's a whole lot of things that could happen, but not just any one had to happen over the course of one instance. We're looking at again, the chain reaction, domino, snowball effect, whatever you want to say.
And I found it, by the way.
Oh?
Yeah. According to the listing over on Wikipedia for the cosmic calendar, if we take the Big Bang as being January 1st, 00000, as far as time is concerned, our sun is theorized to have formed on or about 31 August, so equivalent to kind of now, and the oldest rocks would have been some 17 days later, 16 September. So we are theoretically, or hypothetically, we are 3/4 of the way through the cosmic year before we even have heat in our neck of the solar system, or before we even have a solar system.
Yeah.
So back for you, Joe.
Yeah, I just found the same page, and as I said, we're not even talking about history. History itself. It lists it as the very first writing would have occurred on December 31st, 11:59 and 47 seconds. The official beginning of the Bronze Age.
Yeah. So, recorded history, humanity in general, we're existing in the last minute of the current cosmic year.
I mean, hell, you want to talk about before history, prehistory? Agriculture only began 14 seconds on the cosmic clock. It would have only began 14 seconds earlier.
Yeah.
Now, there is something that you said that really caught my attention, and is quite right, and fits exactly into this. These are our understandings of the universe at this point. How many times over have humans from whatever culture, whatever civilization, looked at things and said, this is X, this is caused by X, this becomes X, this will become X, this was crafted together by X, only to find out later, well, that was wrong.
No.
And it's amazing. It is utterly amazing. And to give you an idea as to exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think about ancient, as far back as ancient civilization is concerned, thriving civilization, I think back to the Egyptians. Staggering amount of stuff, quality, writing, art, philosophy, and even though they had a lot of stuff wrong, they had a thriving civilization. Thousands upon thousands of people, with monuments to the dead that survive thousands of years later to the present day. Even though Napoleon's sons of bitches went ahead and shut off the nose off of the Sphinx, but hey, who am I to judge, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, it's just we run into that throughout history every single time. It's a matter of, well, what we understand of the world as it is from what we can see right now and, what we are able to understand. Good example, humors.
Yes.
And
excellent.
I'm not talking funny. I'm talking the medical practices that were based on the idea that the human body was comprised of 4 humors, and each of these represented a particular element of nature. And we're not talking the periodic table. You had the red humor, which was blood, which was supposed to be air. Black bile, which was earth. Yellow bile, which was fire. Blue, phlegm, which was supposed to represent water. And their medical expertise on curing many diseases was, of course, bloodletting.
And based off of all that.
Let's go get the leeches. Now, in some cases, this did actually affect the situation, and sometimes it was helpful. But
Sure.
That's the problem, is that they took one instance where this actually worked and started applying it over a very wide variety of situations that it just did not work at. And rather than explore, eventually somebody did explore this and said, yeah, this is wrong. Rather than explore it previously, folks just said, oh, well, it's nothing wrong with the method, must be something wrong with you.
Wow. Sounds like a call they had with my cable provider a few months back.
Ooh,
Okay.
we're not going to get into cable talk, and because there's just stuff. But
Okay, Weird Al.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Okay,
Well,
so
You think of
Yeah,
it this
go
way. We've used this phrase before, standing on the shoulders of giants.
yes,
You look at Newton. I go back to Isaac Newton because a lot of people do.
oh my God, what a freaking brilliant mind.
Yes, but in his time, he hit the wall. He eventually got to a point where the method, the technology, and everything else was just not there for him to push beyond what he'd already learned. So at some point, he finally got to a point and said, yeah, sorry, you got me. Cut to, I think it was maybe a century later, someone follows in his footsteps, but now society and humanity has had a century. New tools, new ways of looking at things, perhaps new perspectives based on social culture, dare I say it, religion, a few other things. Now someone else comes up, picks up where he left off, and pushes forward even more until they cannot go any further.
And then you wait, and you catch up, and you leapfrog, and your cycle repeats.
Yeah, you base your work on what you had before, and at some point, I think it was even Einstein. I think his theory of relativity, he was able to say that he was wrong on some counts because it didn't take certain things into effect.
Yeah.
But he went back on it and said, you know what? Yeah, I goofed, or I didn't necessarily goof, but I have to change things in light of new evidence. So I have witnessed something, and I have repeated something that is not congruent with what I have said. Therefore, I must go back and reevaluate this one thing, or I must reevaluate my theory and come up with something else.
Here we are. His so-called greatest wonder.
Yeah, folks, as you can see, we are sort of real-time fact checkers. We go out and do this. We say we think, and then one of us will help pick it up and say, yeah, you're either right, or yeah, you're full of crap.
Between 1912 and 1915, he had published all sorts of equations on gravitational fields that were mathematically wrong. And he was not a mathematician. He would be the first to admit. And it wasn't until later that he noticed this and went back to correct it. I think that was the one that I was mentioning before. But yeah, it was his work on gravity that he was trying to continue where Newton had left off.
Yep.
Which comes back to something that we have often said on this show: never just be satisfied.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Now there's a piece that kind of goes along with that really needs to be brought yet again. As much as it gets old saying it, it's still as relevant every again, quoting from Dr. Richard Feynman, Professor Feynman. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't make any difference how smart you are or who made the guess or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Dr. Tyson, and I'm going to be paraphrasing it for a second here, who basically said, that's the beautiful part about facts. It's the same everywhere. The fact is the fact everywhere you go, no matter who you are, what language, or where you are geographically. If it's the truth for everybody.
Yeah. I've been hesitant to bring this up because when you first sent out the notice about what the show was going to be about, what if you're wrong, of course my brain turned to the one thing that we're not really planning to discuss here, which brings up a whole list of, possible topics. There's one thing I would like to sort of touch on though briefly. We've talked about what our reactions are as somewhat rational thinkers, skeptics, what you will.
That's what I was going to mention earlier was, we've gone over what happens when we're wrong.
Yeah. What I find, I don't want to say exquisitely, deliciously, schadenfreudenly beautiful, but one thing I have noticed is when, and I'm seeing this more and more, when a religious person, creationist, believer, fundamentalist, call them what you will, when these people go out and stake a claim and they push you with facts, I use that term loosely, they push you with their own things, and a more rational person fires back and says, you know what, this, and this. And I mean, you can be trope busting, you can be hitting them with evidence coming from a scientific perspective from anything. Long and short, they're debunked. They are told, they are told in no uncertain terms that they are wrong. and that what they're talking about, they either know nothing about, or they're, like I said, completely wrong. But instead of doing the grown-up thing, like we said we do, take the mea culpa, realize it's a bitter pill, get a little humbled, but pick up, dust off, reevaluate, and move on, it turns into, how do I put this delicately?
I can.
Please
Double
do.
down and hunker down.
Yeah, but it doesn't even, it stops becoming about the content of the claim or the presentation of any kind of evidence. It turns into, and I hope I'm using this term right, just nothing but ad hominem attacks.
Well, that's the thing, is that when it involves religion, in the sense that you're referencing, somebody being overzealous about it,
yeah,
is that religion is the surrender of all reason and responsibility to an external force, whether that force is, there or not. They believe it is. And so all the responsibility of their claims are staked on this external force. So they won't see it as, oh, I'm wrong. No, absolutely not. I'm just preaching the truth. And the moment that you start questioning the source of their reason and where the responsibility of their beliefs lies, that's when they start taking, violent offense to it.
Yeah, but
I
mean,
they become this crusader, violently defending, their God, their belief.
Well, see, I've seen instances where it gets even worse than that, and I'll bring this one up. One of the more prolific YouTubers out there, I'm going to use his name, and I'll probably catch hell for it, but The Amazing Atheist.
Okay.
Say what you will about him, okay? Actually, this is what I find about a lot of atheist YouTubers. When they're on the atheist kick, I really like what they do. As soon as they get into current events, social things like that, it's like, nope, I'm taking a step back. But that's a topic for another time, I think, because we're kind of hypocrites in that respect. But my point. So there was one guy, I guess he was out there making claims, and DJ from the Amazing Atheist stood up and did what he does, and what we do. We debunk, we trope bust, we try to show people that you're doing nothing but rehashing what this guy has done many times before and has been debunked over and over and over again. What this guy started doing, though, was launching personal attacks against the guy. Started talking about, oh, well, you had a dildo on your show. You're the amazing analyst. What the hell does that have to do with the original argument?
Nothing.
No, and you see, and I think what happened is deep down, these guys realize they do not have anything to stand on. So what they do is, oh, okay, I'm wrong? Yeah, well, you're stupid. And that's exactly, it devolves into nothing more than something that is so drama-filled, you'd swear these guys were in the furry fandom.
Oh, that's great. Which, by the way,
all I'm saying, I'm just saying, guys, like,
okay.
It turns into basically a playground mudslinging argument.
Okay. Now, there's a piece about this that I want to change around, not because I want to go the politically correct route, but because I think it's ultimately a much better term to work with. Now, folks who've seen me for a long time know full well, after my wife died, one of the few things that I really grasped onto really, really tightly was language, because it's one of the few things that I had as much control as possible, because it's in here, and I needed to try to pull that all back together again. I don't want us to use the word, the terminology of religious people. I want to go with something that is actually a lot more accurate for what we're describing.
Fanatics.
I was going to go with ideologues, because it's not so much that people are religious, therefore they hold on to something as tightly as possible, because there are people who are scientific and don't want to let go of something that's wrong because they have a personal investment in it. They are ideologically opposed to something that changes out something that they thought that they were right on. And I'll give you a perfect example. Tesla. Tesla believed wholeheartedly, whole hog, that he could make that death ray. He believed in the pieces that he could jumpstart past all the incredible things that he did, but was driven and believed that he could make so many different things happen. And he was truly, maybe I'm overstating what I was about to, because I was going to say he was truly a scientist. No, he was truly an inventor.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily the best knockdown drag out scientist.
Okay, you know what?
So-
I can take a mea culpa on that one and go with ideologue versus religion because, yeah, you can have ideals on just about any topic. I'll go back. I'll go back a lot to my ex-father-in-law. We got into some pretty good verbal exchanges, and I'll use that term.
Sure.
But sometimes they were about religion, sometimes about politics, sometimes about current events. And I do take a little bit of smirking, crap-eating grin satisfaction that he's probably watching this whole marriage equality thing going on down in the States right now, and is probably drinking just that much more. Because, let me I tell you, when I say he's got old world philosophies, he's got old world philosophies. And
Yeah. And I was listening to NPR earlier this week and heard about the whole situation that occurred down in Louisiana and how it's going to end up probably getting pushed up to the Supreme Court. And as up to now, the Supreme Court has not really decided one way or another, which is why it's been up to states individually. I'm holding my breath on that one, but then again, part of me says, yeah, don't.
yeah.
That's truly going to be something that's going to be very, very interesting to watch, because to use somebody else's expression, the storm, she is a-coming.
Oh, yeah.
And I try, like many people, I try really hard to try to understand what as many sides of the argument are and try to judge where I think it'll go. I'm not a lawyer, but if this should go to the ultimate court in our country here in the United States, not Dallas, because Dallas is in Canada, here in the United States, the Supreme Court has a long-standing history of kicking stuff back into play down to the lower courts on some technicality or other. Any technicality that they can find so that they don't it's kind of hard to describe. It's the Supreme Court, any court, will typically take whatever is the least, the path of least not resistance, of trouble. The path of least trouble, and follow that first and foremost. The Michael Nesbitt, I think was his name, here in the United States, has been pushing for getting under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance, getting one in God we trust off of the money. I think I forget which one it is that he's been working on, and it's been kicked back into play, kicked down to the lower courts on technicalities. Not that they've gone ahead and said you're right or you're wrong, but just we're not saying anything about it because we shouldn't touch this hot potato yet. And I'm afraid that the courts will do that too many damn times. And they may be completely in their rights to do that, and they may be forced to do that because procedurally that's the way it's supposed to happen. But I'm afraid that that's going to be too much of a pain in the neck.
Well, when it comes to, like, especially currency, I mean, that is a federal matter. Like, kicking that down to a lower state-based court is nothing short of stupidity, because
Well,
1/50th of the United States is supposed to have ultimate saying power as to what goes on the currency? No.
that's a problem that, believe it or not, we actually have addressed here in the U.S. before, because there was a time in the early U.S. where each state was responsible for its own currency, and that led to a whole slew of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the question really becomes, is each state that has the Federal Reserve printing in it, can they issue slight differences on the money?
Well, they already do. If you examine, a penny, there's a little codified letter on the front of a penny that tells you at which that it was manufactured. Now, granted, that's not necessarily coming down from the state influencing that particular coinage center, but
It does identify it specifically.
yes.
Yeah, but that could be a federally mandated sort of for tracking purposes or accounting purposes.
It does not affect the actual value of the currency thereof.
No. But again, but right now you guys have one currency. You have the U.S. dollar and all of its subsidiaries. But the fact is, you don't have a Tennessee dollar versus a Texas dollar versus.
You want to see just how confusing this can get and how much of a pain in the ass it can be? Yeah, try balancing your checkbook of NCR bills, bottle caps, and Legion Denari.
Yeah, but so to my point, when they're talking about SCOTUS kicking back the In God We Trust to a lower court. Now, I don't know if it's a lower federal court. If there is a lower federal court, again, I don't know your guys' system
Yes, there are.
well.
U.S. district courts, yes.
Okay, so if it's down to a district court, okay, as long as it's still a federally jurisdiction court.
Yeah.
But yeah, kicking it down to a state level, no. That there, like if the district court say, well, you filed this from New York, you should have filed it from here, whatever. No. But I can also understand their hesitancy, if that is such a word, to act on this. Because think about it. You think about the Christian saturation in society, especially in U.S. society these days. You pull that off of there, you pull the In God We Trust, even though it is most likely the right thing to do. All I'm thinking is just batten down the hatches. Molly, grab your gun. Is all I can say, because it will be a revolution.
To answer your question, as far as courts go, I believe in the states, as far as each particular state goes, I believe it goes municipal, county, and then state Supreme Court.
Right.
And then if it goes beyond the state Supreme Court, then it has to become a federal matter, at which point it goes to U.S. District Court, which is the lowest of the federal courts. Then it goes to Court of Appeals, and then, of course, finally the highest is the Supreme Court, which takes place only in Washington, D.C.
Right, okay.
Now, what does this all have to do with what if you're wrong? Well, believe it or not, it's got a big piece of it. Because if the courts take on a case that's brought to its attention, it's two people who are saying, I believe that this is wrong for this reason. Well, I think that they're wrong and you shouldn't go through with that for these reasons. The question then becomes, what if they get it wrong? What if the argument is made for the wrong answer for all of the right reasons, and precedent is set, or a legal setting comes into place.
Legal precedent is the proper term.
Okay. What then? That is a huge, huge problem, and it's one of the things that can paralyze the court system here in the United States, because there are so many different avenues, there are so many different questions on what if I do the wrong thing.
That is why the Supreme Court so often is in the headlines as rejecting certain cases.
Exactly. Exactly that, right. And like I said, sometimes it's exactly the right thing to do, because a good example to my thinking is if you were to take a letter and you were to tape a dollar bill, or in this case a loonie, onto the front of it and try to put it through the post office would not take it through. It would not exchange the dollar or the loonie for proper postage. It's not the right procedure. For exactly the same reason.
Though it does work with, U.S. coinage.
What I mean is, if you tape it onto the envelope,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They will do that?
Yes, if you... Now, I cannot say that this is official procedure. However, I can mark multiple occasions where individuals have quite literally taped coinage to the front of an envelope, placed it into a secure box where only the post office could then get a hold of it, and yes, that was treated as, okay, you know what, we'll go ahead and send it.
Well,
guess what? Here's the opportunity. I was wrong.
There you go.
And you know what? Kids, close up your ears. And you know what? Fuck me. I would not have expected, as a matter of fact, I would have expected that it should never happen that way. And the fact that it could have happened, very likely has happened at least once, means that I can only use it as a theoretical at this point. Because, well, apparently I was wrong.
See, now you've got to, yeah, but now you gotta sit back, you gotta pick up, dust off, reevaluate, and come out again,
and kick a puppy.
Let's see. Answers. Now this is from Google, or from Yahoo Answers, which again, it's no official statement. It's just from various people. Can I attach money to a letter instead of a stamp? And there's answers from both directions. No, that won't work. You need a stamp to be in the undelivered bin. Somebody could easily peel off the coins and pocket them. Blah blah blah. You need to go through the stamping office, and yet there are several situations of people responding. Yes, I know. Yes, I know I can because I have done it many times. The post office. Now, here's the thing: if you do this and everything goes according to plan, when that arrives at the regional post office to be sent out to wherever it's supposed to go, if they find this situation, and as long as the change is correct, the idea is that they are supposed to go ahead and take the change, put that in the register as a sale, and attach a stamp in its place. So long as it's the correct amount. You can't just tape a penny to the front of a paper. Now, does this work every time? Probably not. Is there any official precedent for it? Probably not. But it's done. And there are cases where it works.
All right. To my point, because Jesus, to my point, if a court makes a bad law, if they get it wrong, the outcome can be devastating. I can think of one right off the top of my head that the Supreme Court got it wrong. Dead to rights wrong. Stamped on your foot and hit across the head with a frying pan like something out of Tom and Jerry wrong.
There's plenty of situations of that, but...
And I'm thinking of one of the earliest and one of the most infamous, Dred Scott. Dred Scott decision in the United States was one of the most heinous acts of law that many people study and to this day look back at and go, Jesus, man, what the hell were you thinking?
And yet, at the time...
It made sense. And that's the thing about it. And admittedly, there are many times when it's happened that it was wrong. And for the law, it can be a huge deal because you have to go through an entire procedure that is designed for protecting those new precedents from being assailed unless you got an incredibly powerful argument against it. We've got things like the presidential elections here in the United States in 2000 that some say was rigged from the outset. That who only knows? I'm not going to rehash it. I'm going to simply point to it as, yeah, people say that this was bad law. And it's entirely possible that it might have been. But what do you do when you get it wrong? When it's an individual, people are smart. Individual people are smart. They are willing. You get a group of them together and you make law. That's a whole other piece that maybe one day we'll be smart enough to get into. I don't even know that we'd be able to, but damn, there's a lot. There's just a lot into it. And we're just, for the most part, talking about what happens here in the United States. I will not insult Dallin by trying to even delve into the Canadian structure. I don't know. I truly am ignorant to it. The most that I know is what I've seen from comedy shows like This Hour Has 22 Minutes, which, if you ever wanted to have an opportunity of seeing how you can absolutely lampoon the news and get right up close and personal with the government, Jesus, nobody does it better than you guys for that.
Yeah, the two big shows, This Hour Has 22 Minutes and Royal Canadian Air Force, they have had a long-standing rapport with the highest members of our government.
Yeah.
I'll refer you to, oh shoot, who was it?
So that's why everybody's so nice up there, because your media is vicious.
Actually, I think, no, honestly, I do think a lot of people who go into the public sector as politicians, especially up here, they go in knowing that, you know, there's going to be some lampooning, there's going to be some lambasting, and they take it in stride. I think one of the best ones I ever saw was, it was on Royal Canadian Air Force, which is now off the air because, well, reasons. They had two people on there, Luba Goy and, shoot, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they were doing a lampoon of an interview on Parliament Hill between Pamela Wallin from CTV News, one of our stations up here, and then Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. Who, by the way,
nobody can understand him anyway.
Yeah, well, I have met him once. Shook his hand. He ain't got much of a grip. Just saying. Anyways. I had to throw that in there. Anyways. Yeah. So they start off with their thing. Doing the whole thing. I mean, the guy's got, you know, the crappy accent, and she's doing, you know, whatever she does. And all of a sudden, the real Pamela Wallin walks up. Looks at her and says, "You don't know what the hell you're doing. Get out of here. I'll show you how this is done." Nice. But wait, as one of our people from Friday night is so fond of saying, it gets better.
Yeah, that would be you, actually.
Well, I think
you and me.
I think I've assumed ownership of that phrase, but anyways. So the real Pamela Wallin is now interviewing the fake Jean Chrétien, and about 4 lines later, the real Jean Chrétien walks up, and he says, "Nah, you do not know what it is you are doing here. You stand over there, I will show you." And they exchange about 4 words each. "Hi, I'm Pamela Wallin. Nice to meet you. What do you think of this? I don't like it. Okay, thank you. You're welcome." And that was it. That was the end of the skit. But the fact that the two real people that were being lampooned actually stepped up, took the whole thing in stride, and actually ended up, I don't know what you'd really... The video version of a photobomb of this entire skit. And I can tell you it was probably not contrived, not scripted. I don't think these two people were even thinking of it. Now, as contrast, I refer to a skit that you're fond of, Shujin, Talking to Americans.
Yes.
Now, there was actually a whole special done on that, where this was before the 2000 election, where, damn it, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, where Rick Mercer actually had a chance to try to talk to Governor Bush.
Oh, God.
Or then Governor Bush. Let's just say when George turned to talk to him as he was moving away, the temperature in the area seemed to drop by about 5 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all I can really say is that I think some politicians really, like south of the border, that really got to get more in touch with the people and just take the laugh. Because I'll tell you, showing a little humanity these days is probably what's going to save your butt in office, I think.
I'm so glad that you went that route, because there's no better example of, hey, we're wrong. Look at the current approval rating, not of the president, of the U.S. government in general, the folks who are acting as our representatives. The approval rating is, if I remember correctly, somewhere around 32%.
If you're generous.
Now that's cynicism. We could have used that a couple of shows back.
That is a matter of somebody's fucking up, and yet, you know, somebody at some point decided, yeah, we're going to keep these guys around.
And the funny part of it is, midterm elections are coming up.
Look, people, there's a difference between making a mistake, accepting it, and moving on, and then repeating the same thing, expecting a different outcome. I believe Einstein defined that as insanity.
Yeah.
Very much so. And
well, actually, when you think about all the tropes and stuff we keep talking about, and when I took my first foray into non-belief, critical thinking, all that stuff, one of the first questions I posed to myself was, okay, so, and this is before I really knew what the so-called theistic tropes were. You know, we all start somewhere. I asked myself, it seems that most ideologues of that particular bend are firing magazines off with the exact same ammunition every single time. And I always asked, what happens when they run out? Well, now I've had my answer. They grab the same magazine with the same ammunition and they try again, hoping for a different result. Never getting it, but hoping for it anyway.
Yep.
Insanity much?
See, I found something earlier that just completely fits with what we're discussing tonight. And seeing as we've already touched on, you know, Einstein and Hawking and Sagan and Tyson, might as well throw another one.
And the Nazis. We got the Nazis in there.
You did?
We might as well go ahead and toss out another one. This is a quote from one Professor Brian Cox, OBE. Now, it's not Sir Professor Brian Cox, OBE, because it's OBE. He's an officer, not a knight.
Wait a minute. Brian Cox, was he the one that was doing the thing about string theory on PBS and such?
Yep.
Okay.
British guy.
I didn't realize he was British.
Beautiful accent. Beautiful accent. The problem with today's world is that everyone believes they have a right to express their opinion and have others to listen to it. The correct statement of individual rights is that everyone has the right to an opinion, but crucially, that opinion can be roundly ignored or even made fun of, particularly if it is demonstrably nonsense.
Brilliant.
Didn't I say this a couple of shows ago where, yes, you've got freedom of speech, but that doesn't protect you from the consequences of being an idiot?
That's true. You can go ahead and say anything you want. I've got just as much right to go ahead and tell you where you're wrong.
See, that's where it comes down to, all these folks that are getting on to atheists being like, you're wrong, you're evil, you're all these horrible things. Look, we are more than happy to allow you the entitlement to your opinion as anyone else. But if you're expecting us to listen, you better be providing some evidence that will, in fact, give us reason to take any stock in what you're saying. Otherwise, we're either going to ignore you, or if you keep trying to shove it down our throats, we're going to ridicule we're going to mock you, and that is the beautiful thing.
Actually, kind of sort of dovetailing onto that, I mentioned this particular show it was a couple episodes back. He's a new guy to the scene. It seems he's known on YouTube as the Armored Skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Apparently he's from my neck of the woods in terms of north of the border. I do believe he might be out west here, but I could be wrong. He's done a pretty good job of himself not revealing anything about himself except that he's from Canada. He hasn't posted much lately, but he did post one recently where some guy was trying to push the burden of proof, i.e. the proof that God exists or does not exist, onto the atheist portion.
He was trying to say that you're the one that's claiming that God doesn't exist. Where's your proof, huh?
Yeah, which of course you can't prove a negative. But this was a 24-minute or roughly that much video where this guy is trying to.
I saw that.
He's trying to justify his position of pushing the burden of proof onto the skeptic, as opposed to actually proving it himself.
I had actually seen that video not more than a couple of hours ago.
Okay, yeah.
Essentially, what he's trying to say is that we're the ones saying that there is no God, and rather than him providing proof that there is a God, where's our proof that there is no God? He's misrepresenting atheism in general. Yeah. We are skeptics. We are neither saying there is a God nor that there is no God. We're saying that there is not enough proof for us to believe that there is a God, and that is a personal observation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now we will express our reasoning to others, but we're never going to try to shove it down their throats that you must accept that there is no God or that there is not enough proof for God. Look, we leave it up to you to decide.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be rational here.
And besides that, if it turns out that, one of two things. If it turns out that we actually are wrong about it, okay, fine.
I thought we weren't going to do Pascal's wager.
No. But I'm going to caveat with this. If we are wrong, if this Supreme Being shows himself and proves himself to the satisfaction to the point that we, as atheists, critical thinkers, agnostics, whatever the hell you want to call us, are deemed as wrong, I reserve the right to walk up to said Supreme Being, look him right in whatever visual thing he's got, because he might not have eyes. I'm going to look him straight in that, and I'm going to say, what the hell took you so long?
I'm probably just going to smack the shit out of him and say, explain mosquitoes to me, please.
Yeah, okay. Did I mention that I'm from northern Canada? The province I was born in, the mosquito is the provincial bird, okay? I'm pretty sure by the time I was 12 years old, my blood was a significant portion mosquito venom.
Oh, on that lovely item, I think it's about time to wrap.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot.
Yeah.
And
I'm out of beer, too, so.
Yeah, so I think that was about as good a time as any.
We had a late start. We've made up for it and then some. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
and we got to the piece that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you very much for sticking out with us and going around this rabbit hole with us. And yes, that's a cracking bunny. That's also another one at the bunny. She'll figure it out later. Joe, thank you very much for your time and patience. Jesus.
Look, like I said, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I have no illusion that I am ever going to be a decided expertise on any subject whatsoever. I have some good ideas. If those ideas are wrong, okay. I've got no problem with that. We're human.
I was expecting for you to close that with "deal with it" too.
Oh, well, shit, now I can.
Yeah, it's all right. It'll wait.
I saw what he was doing there.
So did I. Dallin, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it, really.
No problem. All I can say is to people out there who do have stuff debunked, whatever the claim is, and decide you want to, instead of going back around the facts, you want to start launching personal attacks on people. Consider this. You want me, or you want people to respect your opinion, or to respect you for saying what you said. If you can take the fact that you have been wrong, misled, misinformed, or just generally misinformed about what it is you're trying to say, if you take that fact that you are wrong and come back to me with either a new way of looking at it, or that you've shown me that you've done your homework on this, I will respect you more than you just coming after me demanding respect because whatever. You want respect? Then show that you're worthy of it. Take your lumps. Yeah.
And a banana does not count as evidence.
No. Take your lumps, get your facts straight, then come at me. I'm a rank amateur at this, and yet I still think I can blow most of these people out of the water with even what little I know. But if I'm ever presented with new facts, guess what? I'm going to come back stronger. What are you going to come back as?
So thank you, man. There are a lot of questions to what to do when you find out that you're wrong. Like we mentioned earlier, you could double down and hunker down and hope the hell that somebody's just going to completely ignore the fact that you're wrong and not exploit it. You could own up to it. You could whitewash it. You could smokescreen it. You could examine it. What you do with what you do is your business. It's none of ours. Until and unless you make it our business. If you want to go ahead and you want to tell us that you're right about something and we're wrong about something, just saying you're wrong doesn't do anybody any good, and truthfully, I got sick and tired of that from about the age of 7. It wasn't any much fun listening to my 3-year-old cousin say, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, why? It's mine, when it's something that I brought with me to their house. And yes, I'm being a little bit cryptic about it because it's not specifically about me. It's generic. It's something that children do because that's what children do. It's mine, I'm right because it's mine and I'm right. Doesn't hold any water when you get into double-digit ages. You want to show somebody that you want to be respected for your opinion? Show us the respect of having done your own damned homework. Don't make us do it for you. And if you say, well, I'm not going to show you where I'm right, you go ahead and it's right there for you to go ahead and look for if you just go ahead and you just go look for it. That also doesn't do anybody any good. If you really want us to believe you, play on our terms. We're willing to play on yours. You want us to understand where you're coming from? We'll, in a lot of cases, we'll be willing to do a little bit of legwork. In some cases, some of us have. You want to go on the theological side? A lot of us have read the Bible. Some of us have tried. Some of us are still trying. Some have read it multiple times in multiple different versions. Could be the Quran. Could be the Pentateuch. Could be the Torah. It could be the loose cannon of the flying spaghetti monster. But when all is said and done, if you want to argue about something, make sure that you actually know your shit. Because if we come along and we say, okay, but you're kind of missing the point with something like this with what you're saying, and we don't really know the material, and we can say that you're making procedural mistakes that short-circuit what you're trying to do, if we're rank amateurs, as Dallin has quoted it, and I have no problem with that terminology for us, if you think that you're so well-versed and we can show you where there are problems, what does that say? Use the opportunities that science does. Science says, I got something wrong, and I can learn from that now, because that's something I didn't know before. And if ever you wanted to see how important that is, look no further than an episode of Mythbusters. They get shit wrong all the time. And they love it because it's something new.
Especially when it gives them the chance to make something go boom.
Mm-hmm.
The guys over at CERN were hoping that they didn't find the Higgs boson where they were looking for it, because that would have meant that an entirely new, absolutely brand spanking new area of discovery was ahead of them. Something that had never been conceived of before. Something that nobody had been anticipating for. But if they had found out that there was something new to explore, how wondrous, how amazing, and how glorious the human endeavor and the human achievement to find out, I was wrong. Let's go find the right answer. He wasn't wrong a lot, but even Arthur Conan Doyle's most famous of investigators made mistakes too. And it pissed him off, because it came down to, why did I make that mistake? And that is the biggest course to learning. It always comes down to our entire piece. Why? Keep asking that. Thank you for joining us for tonight. We will be looking forward to the 14th of this month, 1 week from now. I'm going to be seeing about asking a couple of podcasters to join us in the near future. Specifically, I'm going to be asking Sam Mulvey to come back, and I'm going to be asking Seth Andrews to join us together so that we can talk through a question that I want to pose. And I'm hoping that you guys out there will ask them to give serious consideration to joining us, because I want to postulate the question, how many atheist voices should there be out there? How many podcasts, how many on-air radio shows, how many crossing the line back and forth should there be out there? And does it matter at what level? Because there are more and more and more who are trying to make it out there. And I would like to find out the opinions. How many of us should there be? And why? I think that would make for a really great show. I don't know that that's going to be for next week. That may be a week or two out, because it's going to have to, organize a little bit of time. But I think that that is a wonderful question to follow through with at some point in the very near future. But what is next week going to be? I don't know. But we'll find out together.
Toast.
He could be wrong.
It could be. But in any case, we'll look forward to seeing you for that show, no matter what it's going to be. If you have your recommendations, please send them over to me. shujintribble@gmail.com. Please put in the subject line, holy crap, so I know what it's about. If you would like to drop a voicemail to us, please feel free. Again, that phone number is 859-4288-554. And again, 859-HCTV-554. I'm giving serious consideration to investing a little bit more time into this and a little bit more resources. I don't know that I'll be able to do it yet. I really don't. But give us your thoughts, and we'll see where we go. Many thanks go out to all of you other podcasters and radio personalities who have been influencing us. Sam and Cash and Noah, Heath, and Lucinda. The guys over there at Cognitive Dissonance. The guys over there at Thinking Atheist, Hammett Meta, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and so many others. Thank you for being the inspiration for helping us to go along. Especially to you, Frank, because were it not for you pissing me off, I wouldn't be doing this today. And finally, to my wife. Even though it's been 9 years, you're still with me every day. I miss you. Truly and deeply. 26 years would have been a wonderful endeavor now. But as always, I will do exactly what I promised. I would not die for you as a sign of my love. I will endure. Because I love you just that much. Matane Fujin. Dream of me. As always, everyone, until the very next time we get together, thank you for joining us, and of course, I wish you the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. Until the next time we get together, good night.